In today's video, I'm going to speak about what do university lecturers actually do. Now, I'm going to break this video down into 3 different segments. First of all, the main duties of a lecturer day to day. Secondly, the salary and the contract. And finally, very quickly, I'm going to speak about the pros and cons of being a lecturer. Okay, so beginning with main duties, I'm going to focus on the first part, which is teaching. And you may be wondering, how many hours of teaching a week do you do as a lecturer? Now, this completely varies. What I do find though is in the early stages of your career, you do quite a lot of teaching. It could be 14, 16 hours a week. And as you get older and get a few promotions under your belt, you actually do less teaching and focus on more admin-based roles within academia. Now I've got a schedule here, as you can see, from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Let's say for argument's sake, this person's schedule consists of 12 hours of teaching a week. That's just the teaching, that's just delivering the content. You have to plan it as well, and planning does take time. Now, if you're teaching 16 hours a week, it could take you 2 hours to plan each hour. So therefore, on average then, 32 hours of planning goes into your weekly teaching schedule. And an issue that you have in academia sometimes is you have little time to prepare each week to get this ready. What I mean by that is the head of department, they choose who teaches what, and they might not give you a timetable until a week, 2 weeks before you actually start teaching. This is incredibly stressful. You don't know what you're teaching, and once you do, you have little time to make sure that you're ready. And what you find is nighttime, you're supposed to relax, you're trying to switch off from your very busy day in academia, but you don't, because you've still got loads to do. You have to prepare the lecture for the next week or the next day. And particularly in the early stage of your career in academia, it's very common at 9 o'clock at night, you're preparing some material and then you have to deliver that at 9 o'clock the next day, and you're still not very confident you know what you're talking about. It's sadly very common in those early stages, but through time, through experience, this section does get easier in your career. Another question is, do you just teach your specialist subjects? Not always. You may have to be versatile and teach something else. For example, if your PhD topic is related to physiology, like this one here, you would expect to then be a lecturer in something like exercise physiology or strength and conditioning. But it is very common for a university to turn around and say, can you teach something a little bit different out of your interest, such as anatomy and statistics? So that PhD in physiology may well have done some anatomy and some statistics, they will have knowledge. They won't always feel particularly comfortable teaching it, and that may happen to you as well if you go into lecturing, but you will get comfortable very quickly. The second main duty I'm going to speak about is marking. If you have 100 students, you have got 100 assignments to mark. If you have 2 assignments or 3 assignments per semester, that's even more of a workload. You have different types of assignments to mark, such as videos, presentations, you have exams, and you have essays. This takes a long time, and in this schedule, I've just factored in 4 hours a week. The reality is your marking really will be done in the evenings, on the weekend. When it's marking season, you really don't have much time to yourself. Those 1 or 2 weeks you're doing that will be quite hectic. You'll also be busy with supervision. You're going to have some undergraduate students, you may have some master's students, and you could have a PhD student as well. So let's say this is 6 students. You're going to be busy with these students in different ways. You'll have a lot of emails to answer because they'll be having their breakdowns doing their projects. You probably have a lot of coffee. If you like coffee, then get used to it in academia. You can have a lot of meetings with students to discuss their projects. And you can have to read those projects from time to time and give some feedback to each of those students. And let's say, for example, you factor in 1 hour a week per student, that's going to be 6 hours. Some lecturers will be a lot more efficient with their time. It could just be 20 minutes a week per student. It really does depend on the lecturer. And as well as student research, you have to focus on your own research as well. This is a big part of academia. You may be wondering, how does research get published? If you'd like to learn more about this, I won't speak about it now because I have done it in a previous video. So check this video out if you want to know all the intricate details of how a paper starts and the steps required to get it published. But what I'll speak about now is how many papers a year should you publish in academia? This really depends on your job title. If you're a lecturer, if you're fairly new, then the pressure isn't exactly very high. You're looking at 1 to maybe 3 papers a year. If you're a professor, then you're looking at more 10, 15, 20 papers a year. But these are rough numbers, it will depend on different universities. But one thing everyone can agree on is research takes time. There's a lot of pressure, there's a lot to think about, there's a lot to do. And there's a lot of different steps as well, from the beginning to then getting published. So for example, you need to build relationships. That will take up some time in your job, trying to find people to work with. You then have to get those people together and build a team. You then have to create fresh ideas. And with those ideas, you need ethical approval as well. Next, you have to recruit participants. You then got to go and get the data for that study in the laboratory or elsewhere. That data then needs to be analysed, and you then start putting the paper together. So you write the paper, but the real pressure is then trying to get it published. So it's very, very tricky in academia. It takes a lot of work. Now, you'll see in this schedule here, there's quite a lot of hours factored in for research, but again, this is something that you may find yourself doing during very difficult schedules in the semester, very stressful schedules, where in the evening and on the weekend, you're focusing on your research, trying to get stuff done, doing some major revisions on a paper, or little things like that, which do take up a lot of time. Another aspect of the role which I hadn't really considered until I became a lecturer was the admin side of it. This is just additional stuff which takes up more time than you actually anticipated. For example, it could be writing research proposals, trying to bring in external funding to fund some of your proposed projects. You've also got organising placements. Not every lecturer is involved in this, but some lecturers will be trying to connect with local businesses and get students out on placement. You've got staff meetings, either face-to-face or online. You've got countless emails from colleagues, from students, from external people, which is a never-ending cycle. And you've got open days as well, a couple of times a year where you'll be working weekends. Now, here's the full schedule, so I've added some of the admin stuff there as well. This doesn't really scratch the surface, as I've mentioned 2 or 3 times already. So there's more marking to do at night, there's more admin to do at night, there's more planning to do at night, and the weekend sometimes is stretched out with work as well. So it can be very stressful at different periods of the semester. But then there's other times where it's not too bad. So that was the main duties. I'm going to move on now to the salary and the contract. Starting off with the salary, how much can you earn as a lecturer? Well, the starting salary is around about 32, 34 grand a year in the UK. Each country is different. There are yearly increments, so as you gain more experience in lecturing, as you gain more qualifications, there is more money to be earned. And as you gain promotions, there's more money to be earned as well. So senior lecturer 40, 42, professor 50, 60 and above. Now, that money looks very tempting, but do bear in mind there's even more responsibility as you get promoted. So some people in academia don't really try too hard to get promoted because I think they're happy enough with good money. There's no need to add extra pressure just for the sake of getting a bit more money. I'm going to focus now on the contract. This is worth speaking about, understanding. It's something I didn't really understand when I was doing my PhD and any time before that. There are different types of contracts. Very simple. You have permanent contracts in academia, or you have fixed term contracts, like many jobs. Permanent's very simple, doesn't need explaining. It's a permanent contract. We're going to look at the fixed term contract. Now, it varies. It can be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but the main thing to say here is they're very common in academia. If you want to become a lecturer, it's very rare you go straight into a permanent contract. If you do, very well done, but it's very likely you'll go down a fixed term route for the first couple of years of your career. And to give you an example of moving around and how difficult this can be, you may start off doing a PhD in Newcastle, you then get a year's contract in Birmingham to go and teach, that ends, you then get another contract for a year in Manchester, and then you get yourself a permanent contract in Belfast. So as you can see, you moved around a lot in the past 5-6 years. It's very stressful moving house just once. So you imagine moving 2 or 3 times in a short period of time, and also not knowing what's going to happen next. This can be very stressful, and it is pretty common in academia for this to happen. I'm going to finish off now by speaking about the pros and cons of being a lecturer. Starting with the pros, it's incredibly rewarding. I enjoy working with people on a daily basis, seeing them improve, seeing what you can do for other people's lives is very satisfying. Secondly, there is great flexibility if you work in academia. Away from your teaching and your scheduled staff meetings, everything else pretty much can be done at your own pace whenever you want, any time of the day. You can do your research during the day or you can do it at night. You can write your grant proposal at 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon. There is flexibility when you want to do stuff. And finally, there is good security as well. So once you do get that permanent contract, it is good money. There are yearly increments like I've said, and in general, working in education does have good security. Focusing now on the cons. First of all, short contracts. I've mentioned the fixed term. That's tricky. If you're moving house every year for 2 or 3 years, different cities, the stress of trying to find that next yearly contract is tough, and it's very common for many people in academia to experience this struggle. Secondly, it's hard to switch off. Now, this is just my opinion, and other academics may disagree here, but I would personally find it quite tricky to switch off. Even on the weekend, there's something at the back of my mind, such as I should email that person back, or I've got this to read, or I've got this research paper to focus on. You never truly switch off like a normal 9-to-5 job. And lastly in this section, the risk of burnout. This is very common in academia. If you follow the right circles on Twitter, you will find people in academia speaking about the burnout or the stress they experience in academia. Again, I'm not saying everyone has this, but I have seen it many times. Thank you for watching this video. I've got plenty of content around sports science and how to get into different career areas. If you have any questions specifically, do get in touch with me on Instagram at Sports Science Hacks. Okay, thanks for tuning in, and I'll speak to you again soon.